Hi, welcome to another Tech Up podcast. The issue of plastic pollution has been making the rounds in the news lately. But what can we do about it and what is being done about it? Now, we'll take a look at the drastic amounts of plastic pollution, particularly in the ocean. We'll also look at the effects that it's having on our bodies and the environment, and how scientists manage to figure out how to turn plastic waste into jet fuel. It's going to be an interesting podcast, so let's take a look at it. From grocery bags to plastic straws to tiny microbeads and everything from soap to makeup, the earth is swamped in plastic and will remain so for generations to come. So, how much plastic is that? Well, there's been around 6.3 billion tons of plastic produced worldwide since the 1950s. The plastic production was in clear uptrend, but interestingly, the effect of 2008 financial crisis can also be seen of this. An estimated 8 million tons of plastic wind up in the oceans every year and is pervasive that the Economic Forum predicts that by 2050, if things continue at the current rate, the oceans will hold more plastic waste than fish. At the bottom of 11-kilometer deep marina trench, the deepest part of the explored ocean, plastic waste has been found three times. One of the most personal examples of plastic waste in the ocean is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's a collection of plastic and floating trash which mainly comes from countries in Asia. There's an estimated 1.8 trillion pieces of plastic. There's also a North Atlantic garbage patch which is also growing. All of this isn't to mention that the effect that it's having on wildlife. Already, this isn't great, but it gets worse. A recent study found that we are eating our own plastic waste. In fact, every week we eat enough plastic to make a credit card. Annually, we eat about 250 grams of plastic. This study was carried out by the University of Newcastle. They stated that the most common source of plastic consumption is drinking water. This includes tap water or bottled water. Fish, yes, fish, unsurprisingly, was another source. But interestingly, the other two biggest culprits were salt and beer. A lot is unknown about plastic consumption and its effects in human. But a certain chemical found in some plastics called BPA has been shown to reduce sperm count. Apart from all of this, the main problem with plastic is that it just doesn't break down. It's estimated that foam plastic cup will take 50 years, a disposable nappy 450 years, and a fishing line 600 years to degrade. And so, don't lose hope. It will soon take a look at what's being done about this issue. But first, we should take a look at who exactly are the biggest plastic polluters and where exactly is the source of all plastic waste is coming from. Let's take a look at the data. So, the question must be asked, who's the biggest contributor to plastic waste? We can see who the biggest polluters. Number 1 is China, number 2 is Indonesia, and number 3 is Philippines, and number 4 is Vietnam, and number 5 is Sri Lanka. But note that this was in 2010. Just as China was starting their transformation into an industrial economic superpower, from this time, China's industrial output has grown exponentially. It's said that in this expansion, Chinese does much concrete, as the United States did during the entire 20th century. But anyway, overall, the situation is a bit more complex, as the United States consumes a lot of goods produced in the East. So, one can really exist without the other. In some good news, China is making strides to solve these issues and has reported 66% drop in the amount of plastic bags used in the past year. About 40 billion bags weren't used. So what are the areas that this plastic waste is coming from? Well, according to a 2017 study, about 90% of all plastic pollution comes from just 10 rivers, 8 in Asia and 2 in Africa. So, what sectors are producing the most plastic? Well, by far, it's packaging. Packaging leaves by two times the next biggest category, which is building and construction. Okay, so this sounds all pretty bad. But let's get to the good news about how we can fix this problem. So, slowly in 1980, about 100% of plastics were discarded as waste. Then, in the early 1980s, incinerating started to become a practice. And then, in the late 1980s, recycling was brought into picture. And today, about 45% of all plastic waste is either recycled or incinerated. Not perfect, but it's better than ending up in the ocean in terms of a recycling rate, which is one of the key parts of this entire debate. Because, in theory, if we could successfully recycle our plastic and we wouldn't have a plastic problem. A lot of experts have said that we don't have a plastic problem, we have a waste problem. Compared to the sheer amount of plastic produced, it seems that our recycling efforts may just not be enough to solve this problem in a timely manner. We could demand legislation to curb the production of plastics, but we could also look to technology to help. One team of engineers took this task seriously and developed a massive cleaning device to take on the great garbage patch in the ocean. Unfortunately, in January 2019, the device did break down and happened to be repaired, and it's being relaunched later this year. Perhaps it's better to engineer projects on a smaller scale. These can have an impact on smaller localized area. Rubbish sucking sea bins were recently installed in Sydney Harbour. The devices suck in water, trapping rubbish in a mesh bag and recirculate the water back into the environment. There are 450 bins in 26 countries around the world, collecting around 4 kilograms a day or 1.4 tons a year. Another small ocean cleaner known as Mr. Trash is making a difference in the United States. As the wheel turns, it collects litter from the harbor and stores it in the barge later for removal. There are also legislative actions being taken. We all know about straws being banned in places, and a lot of store outlets have banned single use plastic bags in May 2019. A new model of collecting packages from consumers began. It's called Loop. Some big name partners include Procter and Gamble, Nestle, Pepsi and Co, Unilever, The Body Shop, Coca-Cola, and other firms. But what if we could do even more than that? What if we can turn plastic waste into fuel? Here we come to the story. A group of research people led by Washington State University has found a way to turn daily plastic waste into jet fuel. Yes, into jet fuel. In a new paper published in the Journal of Applied Energy, the scientists melted plastic waste at high temperatures with activated carbon, basically processed carbon with increased surface area, and the end result was jet fuel. So here's how it works. In the experiment, the scientists ground down the plastic waste products like water bottles, milk bottles, and plastic bags about 3 millimeter size, or about the size of a grain. The plastic granules were then placed on top of activated carbon reactor at a high temperature of about 571 degrees Celsius. The carbon, a catalyst or a substance that speeds up the chemical reaction without being consumed by the reaction itself. Project lead and associate professor Henry Lee speaks. Quote, the plastic is hard to break down. You have to add a catalyst to help to break down the chemical bonds. There's a lot of hydrogen and plastics, which is a key component for fuel. Unquote. Once the carbon catalyst has done its work, it can be separated out in the next batch of waste plastic conversion. The catalyst can also be regenerated after losing its activity after testing several different catalysts at different temperatures. The best results they obtained was a mixture of 85% jet fuel and 15% diesel fuel. Lee speaks again. Quote, we can recover almost 100% of energy from the plastic we tested. The fuel is very good quality and the byproduct gas is produced a high quality and usable as well. Unquote. He goes on to say that this process is easily scalable. It can work at a large facility or even on farms where farmers could turn their own plastic waste into diesel. Lee speaks again, quote, waste plastic is a huge problem worldwide. This is a very good and relatively simple way to recycle plastics, unquote. Another research team at Purdue University has invented a way to convert 90% of plastic into many different products, including pure polymers and fuels. Linda Wang, professor at the School of Chemical Engineering at Purdue University, speaks, quote, our strategy to create a driving force for recycling by converting plastic waste into a wide range of valuable products, including polymers or clean fuels. Our conversion technology has the potential to boost the profits of recycling industry and shrink the world's plastic waste stock. End quote. So going back to the jet fuel story, it's not perfect. It's burning fuel. Of course, it will result in greenhouse gases, but it's a big step above what we have now for those countries who don't have the environmental awareness and don't see much issue with throwing plastic in the ocean. It all comes down to profit motivation aspect of the equation. If money can be made by producing plastic waste based fuels, this could be a financial incentive for government and private companies alike to heavily recycle and put in place better methods than landfill. And besides, do you want to keep eating increasingly more amounts of plastic each year? I do encourage the kind of work that these scientists are doing, and hopefully we can see it can be implemented on a large scale. Thank you.